Hey, what's going on, guys? Before we jump into the show, I want to tell you a little bit about what this is. I did a live hit on Bleacher Report this morning to discuss the running back room, DeAndre Swift. There's a chat that's super interactive, so I was going back and forth with some of the viewers, and I put up a poll as well and saw some of the stats that came back, and we broke it all down. So that's what this is. I grabbed it from over there. I believe I was only able to get it at 720p, so the quality won't be as crisp as some of the normal content that I put out here, but I think you guys will still enjoy it. And go Birds, 2 0. Okay, 2 0. Don't lose sight of that. Well. The Eagles take down the Minnesota Vikings and are still undefeated on the season, 2 0, and it's all thanks to DeAndre Swift. Are you kidding me with that effort? Okay, one of the strengths of this Eagles team for a long period of time now, this isn't just under Nick Sirianni. We saw it with Doug Peterson, and it really stems from Andy Reid when he first got into this with the Eagles a long time ago. It's those big, beefy men up front. It's the offensive line. And you saw what they were able to create for DeAndre Swift to have 28 carries, 175 yards. How the hell did he not get carries last week? Why was it the Kenneth Gainwell show in week 1 in New England? It's totally unacceptable when you see the skill set that Swift brings. That was amazing. And no disrespect to any other back that we've watched, whether it was Miles Sanders last year. It looked different. When he plants his foot into the ground and then he runs upfield, makes a hard cut. Those holes were massive that were made by Jason Kelsey and Landon Dickerson, Lane Johnson, and he took advantage of it big time. And look, there's a lot of discussion right now about Brian Johnson, the new offensive coordinator, and why isn't the passing game thriving? And it's legitimate. Jalen Hurts throwing into double coverage isn't going to work. Underthrowing Devontae Smith, it should have been a touchdown. Instead, on the opening drive, it stalls out, and now it's a field goal. That has to be cleaned up. But the run game and relying on your offensive line is a sustainable way of beating down opponents. It wasn't a fluky way of winning. What they showed on Thursday Night Football could be a huge part of their brand and what teams are afraid of. How do you stop that? It is very, very difficult. And it raises the question, what do you do now with the running back committee? I like Kenneth Gainwell, and I thought he showed signs of improvement at the end of last season. At the end of the day, though, he's a nice piece in a complimentary role. Same with Boston Scott. Boston Scott's no joke. Now, unfortunately, he was banged up, and you're dealing with a concussion protocol thing. A lot of this team is hurting right now. So on a short week, after an ugly win, they handle business, and now they're 2-0. I'm taking pride in the fact that they haven't played their best ball, and there's a lot of injuries happening, and you still have a goose egg in the loss department. Not many teams would. You'd be 0-2. You'd be 1-1. Not many teams are 2-0. And that's why I look at this team and say there's something to the core, regardless of what's happening with A.J. Brown on the sidelines. The only time they got away from the awesome running by DeAndre Swift was right after that sequence when A.J. Brown started to talk to Jalen Hurts and show that he wanted the ball more. I thought they got pass happy there and shied away from what was working and how great and successful they were churning the legs in the run department. But ultimately, it should have resulted in a touchdown because Penny, and we'll get to the running back committee in a second, he picks up a flag, and then there was the no defensive pass interference call. So even though they did go into more of a passing look, it should have worked. It should have been 7. So other than that, though, they stayed with the game plan, and that's not easy to do in today's game. It's so easy to want to air the ball out and throw it downfield and get a bunch of yards and see the ball move and the chains move because of a 20-yard chunk, a 25-yard chunk. But this was working, and you were dominating Minnesota, and it was nonstop. They had zero answers. So they continue to commit to it, which is great in my eyes. especially knowing that that's a difficult thing to do. How many times do you scream at your TV if you're watching a different opponent? Let's say the Eagles aren't involved. It's an AFC team, someone you're not emotionally committed to hating. It's not Dallas. It's not New York. It's not the Washington Commanders. So you're just watching and you say, well, how are you getting away from the run? Why aren't you running the football? It's working. Well, you didn't really have that except for one drive. And I will roll my eyes to that one drive. It did happen. Okay. So I'm going to put up a poll here in the chat, and it's, do you care to see anybody else featured as running back one after DeAndre Swift's performance? I think it's pretty set in stone at this point. Let him have the rock until the rock doesn't look beautiful in his hands anymore. Okay, now 28 carries is definitely an aggressive amount. I don't think you're going to be flirting with that number very consistently because you do have to iron out the kinks for your offense in the passing game. But, man, I don't know if there's anyone better in this room right now, in this running back room. Gainwell can be flirted in. Boston Scott could be flirted in. These are different looks. DeAndre Swift is a monster, though, and he can also incorporate some stuff in the passing game, too. I'm sort of shocked because, you see what he does in Detroit. And last year we witnessed it firsthand. I don't really know if there's a debate right now, though. It's the DeAndre Swift show. Penny had some issues staying healthy in the past, and statistically speaking, when he does have the rock in his hands, he tends to do a nice job, yards per carry and all that stuff. But I don't know, they're not seeing something because he barely got anything yesterday after they removed Kenneth Gainwell due to the injury, so he wasn't even a factor, and Penny still struggled, and he picked up that flag. So let's just run with it, man. It says here in the chat, a lot of people are excited for DeAndre Swift. Eric says Swift should be the number one, but Jake says he should split time with Kenneth Gainwell. You're going to see something different every week probably, and that's the threat of the Eagles. You don't know what you're going to get. When you see the New York Giants, it'll probably be Boston Scott getting into the end zone a couple times because they love to force feed him with that matchup, and the legend continues, the legend killer of the New York Football Giants, Boston Scott. But you can, yes, definitely get something new, and it's hard to prepare for that. It could be Swift. It could be Penny. It could be so many different options. But ultimately, I think right now, you're struggling to figure out your identity as an offense. You see the play calling between Brian Johnson and Jalen Hurts. Uncomfortable. I don't know if Jalen Hurts is seeing the field right. And keep in mind, you're going up against the New England Patriots and Bill Belichick on the road week one. Barely playing any preseason, an inexperienced play caller facing Bill Belichick, an extremely sharp defensive mind. Now you're getting thrown on a short week dealing with a ton of injuries, albeit that's probably more on the defensive side. But then you lose Quez Watkins and you lose Boston Scott. So mid-game, you are dealing with things. Now you're seeing Brian Flores. That's a lot to deal with if you're Brian Johnson in this offense. As you work yourself out of this funk, you're still winning games. And while you're struggling to find yourself, if you see this level of talent and if you see this level of greatness with DeAndre, I don't know if right now is the time to be splitting. You could work in looks and you could work in a 2-minute situation right before a half. You could do certain things. You can. Red zone, you can work in different things. We know we love Jalen Hurts in the red zone in theory, although I did see some play calls out of Brian Johnson in the red zone that made me sick. I'm not going into the whole Brian Johnson's the worst OC ever, as Cody Man wants to say. It's too quick to make a judgment like that. Let's see how they build week after week after week. And you could take this run game and you can take this running back number one situation that we saw play out in front of our eyes and build off of that and have sustained winning because of it. If you win because of something fluky, and Minnesota turned the ball over a lot, but you also forced them to do it. Avonte Maddox with the punch out. Edmonds, Justin Jefferson reaching and extending over the end zone there. It goes in the back of the end zone, and now it's a touchback. You made plays to force it. On the punt return or kickoff return. I forget, was it punt return, kickoff return? Regardless, it was a return, and the ball gets loose, and now here's the Eagles football. Josh Sweat, your defense will create turnovers. They are a monster up front. Your trenches are beautiful on both sides of the ball. So my takeaways is you're seeing things that are sustainable. Your defense will create turnovers. This run game will be huge and monstrous and will be a key piece even when you figure out the passing game. And it all stems from DeAndre Swift. So I think it's pretty obvious that you just let this thing roll. Sometimes it's simple. All right, sometimes you don't have to overcomplicate things. What's working? Let's rock with it. Now, Jake also brings up, you can't go wrong with any of these backs. This is what you have right now. You have a ton of great options. That's very true. Tyler says the same thing here with Swift and Penny. If you can incorporate both and have them taking turns, if you're a defense, what style are they bringing? Where's the intensity? Now, I need to see more from Penny, but quite frankly, I didn't know Swift had this in his bag based off of week one because they were so heavy with the Kenneth Gainwell thing. But it is pretty ridiculous to think that this coaching staff would really rely on Kenneth Gainwell that much more and that heavy in week one when DeAndre Swift was available and can work this well. How did they miss that? How was the judgment that off? This isn't the first time. If you remember the Doug Peterson experience, and that was a whole different monster. You had so many injuries, practice squad guys, but we were very aggravated on how come you didn't see that there was so much better options out of the practice squad, and then they get caught up. And, but this is different. It's different. It's the same at the same time, though. Swift didn't really play the first game because of the game Thursday. Swift is the lead back. Well, I don't think they were. Week one, are you telling me that in week one, the coaching staff put their hands up and said, we're not worried about starting off 1-0 by putting our best team on the field and putting our best foot forward? Instead, no. What we're going to do is we're going to hold our best stuff for week two on a short week. You don't think that way, man. It's week one. You need to start off 1-0. It's the first game of the season. You have to start off on the right foot. When you don't, you're the Minnesota Vikings. You're 0-1. Now you're going on the road, and you can't start off 0-2. Think about how brutal that is. So I don't think I'm going with the philosophy of they knew how talented Swift was, and they didn't want anybody to see it because they wanted to hold off for the Minnesota Vikings when you had a game week one on the road in New England. I don't see it that way personally. Gainwell is better than both backs. This is from HDJ. Is better than both backs when he gets the carries. I don't see that. I don't see that at all. I don't think Gainwell is the best. If everything is right in front of them, they get the same offensive line play, they get the same holes created, they're all healthy, I think DeAndre Swift has the higher upside, and he's the one that can tear you down for sure. For sure. Man, what a day. Sometimes I'm still kind of in shock that it looked that dominant. If you remember, it was a few years back, and was it Jordan? I almost said Jordan Davis. It was Jordan Howard in Green Bay, the Doug Peterson era. He ran for a couple touchdowns, and they really committed to that run game. And it was a beautiful thing to see them have all of it in their hands. The other team had zero answers. They were pissed. They were aggravated. You could see how mad they were. They had no business of being on the same field because they couldn't stop the madness. Well, that's how I felt watching Minnesota yesterday. What can you do? What can you do? You could take away the explosive plays in the air. And ultimately, yeah, we are concerned that element hasn't been opened up yet. That part of the playbook needs to thrive. But, man, if you're going to give us this, we're going to take it. And if you're going to let us take it, you're going to have a 0% chance of winning this football game. Jason Kelce won't be stopped. Those lanes won't be stopped. No pun intended on Lane Johnson over there. Man, it's something that is going to carry you a long way. So even when we do hit that peak as an offense, your run game will still be a huge part of it. And that's why I can sleep at night with a big smile on my face, and I'm not going to be complaining on the way that it looks, because the team that you are in September is not the team that you are in January. That's never the case. Joe Burrow stunk game one. Joe Burrow's a damn good quarterback. It's all sloppy in the beginning. If you could win while it's sloppy and figuring out your tendencies and having 2 new coordinators and dealing with so many guys banged up, I love it, baby. I love it. I'm happy as hell. And I love the fact that DeAndre Swift made a statement. I'm sure he's aggravated. I'm sure he bottled up the competition that was happening at training camp. And he knew deep down, I'm better than every single one of these guys. No disrespect. They're my teammates. I love them to death. I love Boston Scott, short little guy out there, right? Was he 5'6", shifty, can cut through some of the big offensive linemen, and you can't even see where he is, and out of nowhere he squeaks through and runs for 10 yards. I love Boston Scott, man. Gainwell, he was a big piece to last year's success in the playoffs. He came out of nowhere. Okay, I like that. I like that. I'm better. Okay? I'm better. I'm coming to South Philly. The light show is going to get me stoked. That light show at the Link was A+. And he grabbed the ball and went down the 175 yards, 28 carries, man. I love it. Okay, so checking in on our poll. Do you care to see anyone else featured as the running back one after DeAndre Swift's performance? 82% of the vote say no, I don't care to see anyone featured, and 18% still would like to. Look, if you told me we get a game where Swift is ready if needed, and they try out Penny, we're still in the tryout phase. You're still in the let's figure it out stage. At the same time, if you told me Brian Johnson said, I don't care to see anybody else, okay, until this thing goes wrong, we're rocking and rolling, I co-sign for that too. Once you find something, let's see, baby. Let's see how it goes. All right? Why did Detroit get rid of Swift so easily? Well, because Howie Roseman's a genius. Hold on a second. You're saying because they know, because HDJ chimes back into the chat, why did Detroit get rid of Swift so easily? Because they know. Are you telling me you're going to go with what the Detroit Lions think football-wise? No, I like Dan Campbell and what they've done. I don't want to get too sidetracked. But I'll tell you what, the last thing I'm doing is making my decisions based off of the Detroit Lions and how they operate their football team. Okay? And people get released and traded and all that stuff all the damn time. All the time. You make mistakes. People make mistakes. Howie Roseman picks up the phone. Beep, boop, 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 boop. Yo, let's make a trade. Bang! Snags him. This is what Howie Roseman does. The guy's a magician. He finds talent. The running back room, think of all the talent in that room. Think about how much money they're paying them. Now go look at what Miles Sanders got as a contract. The way he operates. Smooth criminal. Smooth criminal. No, man. You guys are funny in the chat. I love you, though. I do. I love you. You're making it a lot of fun. I appreciate you guys so much for hanging out here. I got a big smile on my face today, and I will continue to throughout the entire week. And a beauty thing, too, is now you have a mini bye, I guess you'd call it, because they don't play until Monday Night Football. So there's some time for everyone to relax, put their feet up, get healthy before you see your next opponent. And they just keep winning, man. Brown says Swift, Kenneth Gainwell, and Penny. Okay, and Scott. I do want Scott to be involved. I want Scott to be involved. I want all of them to be involved. Swift is the dude, though. There's a big difference when Swift is the dude. All right, everybody. I appreciate you hanging out. Go Birds, as they say here in the Philadelphia area. And we'll be talking soon. Have a great rest of your day.